Hello.
Good morning, Mr. Hudson. It's Jason.
Good morning.
I just wanted to, before we get into our conversation for the day, apologize to you for the nature of our broadcast last night. I had initially booked Andre Taggart for a live interview, but because a third party had released some information about Mr. Taggart's family, he canceled that interview. There's a Marine in the crowdsourced community who had been communicating with Taggart on our behalf for several weeks and had convinced him to come forward for a live interview in which I hoped to ask him certain questions and receive straightforward answers, but it would seem that that opportunity is now lost. Anyway, I don't want to harp on it, but of course, we just wanted to dispel some of the rumors that were swirling around by, confronting some of that information head on last night. And I think we did that. We've lost a lot of subscribers, but there are a lot of people who have emailed me in support of the decision and understand the nature of the problem, and I'm still hopeful that that problem can be resolved. But I wanted to assure you that we are back to business and going to be focusing on all the things that you've been raising and that the crowdsourced community has been raising. Today's my last day in Phoenix, and I had booked a 2-day stay here in the hopes that I could communicate with either Sheriff Joe Arpaio or Mike Zullo. And although some of the things that we've done in the past have caused Dr. Corsi to have to disconnect communications from us, the doctor remains cordial and polite in his communications. And I'm going to try to speak to Mike Zullo again today in support of the research that he's done with Dr. Corsi with regard to the birth certificate, just to get Mike Zullo's input. We've had a lot of people from the crowdsourced community and some of the people that I spoke to here on the streets of Phoenix sharing their personal opinions about the history of Sheriff Joe and their opinions of the legal case against him. And again, my only intention in meeting with Mike is to get firsthand reporting from someone who's worked with the sheriff and obviously has a unique perspective. So I'm going to reach out to him again one more time today in the hopes that maybe his schedule has cleared up and he might be able to meet with us. I've also reviewed that video you sent me from Florida McKee with regard to the cargo ship ramming practice. And I did reach out to Florida McKee several days ago, but I've yet to hear any response. So if you have any way of contacting him, I've only been able to message him through YouTube, and I'm not sure how readily he's receiving those messages or if he'll be able to respond to that. But it was interesting to me that he is a military veteran who, through his own YouTube channel, is using crowdsourced technique. And just as I had originally reached out to George because his approach is similar to what we're trying to do here, I want to reach out to Florida McKee and hope that the efforts of his following audience and our crowdsourced community can be combined to increase the strength and effectiveness of both efforts. And any help that you or anyone listening can provide in doing that would be great.
Right. Jason, that sounds good. We're working on some things today. One of the things I've done is I've reached out to Senator Rand Paul's office, and I have spoken with them, and I'm attempting to get a one-on-one meeting for Mr. Webb so that he can present his evidence on the One Brother spy ring.
I think that would be good.
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, I think that what's important for the audience to know is that we are proactively supporting Mr. Webb's investigation and attempting with everything we have to assist him in getting to the right people. So I've had a couple conversations with them, and I'm awaiting a phone call back in the hopes. Well, I know that we're going to be able to get him in the door. So
that's good to hear. All I've ever wanted to do is help George, Mr. Hudson, and although it may not seem that way to some people, it's been a difficult road. So hopefully doing things like this, we can continue to cooperate, even if we aren't in direct communication, or that's to say, if I'm not in direct communication. But I'm hopeful that that effort will succeed, and that even if George is no longer a direct part of Crowdsource the Truth, we can work in cooperation rather than opposition.
Exactly. I mean, that's what has to take place. Our concern is that the hearing for Mr. Owan is coming up on September 1st. We don't have very many days before that happens. Our concern is that it appears that the brother of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is an assistant prosecuting attorney in the Washington, D.C. area, is involved in this case.
I understand she has in-laws who are involved as well.
Yeah, obviously, it is a serious conflict of interest, especially when you consider that there appears to be, and this isn't conspiracy theory. There appears to be a conspiracy.
Yeah.
And for all we know, we're not claiming that Congresswoman Schultz's brother is directly involved in the conspiracy. But let's face it, he is her brother, and we feel that anybody associated with the Congresswoman needs to recuse themselves.
I agree.
From this case. The other thing is that the only charges that Mr. Awan has been brought up on is bank fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is discussing the other evidence against him.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that there's not an investigation taking place. But our concern is that even though that investigation may be ongoing, the problem is what happens with this case? Is this going to end up as a wrist slap? Is this going to end up being a plea bargain?
Mm-hmm.
And then once Mr. Awan is released, it's our opinion that he will immediately get on board a flight, go to Pakistan, and never be seen from again.
Yeah.
We're very concerned about that. And then you take, for example, his wife, Hina, is already in Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, she has been brought up on charges as well,
mm-hmm.
From what we understand. And if she doesn't show up, then she is going to be a fugitive from justice. Well, that may sound okay to some people, but how are we going to get her in Pakistan and bring her to the United States for trial?
Yeah, there's been some confusion as to whether there is an extradition treaty with Pakistan or not.
You know, I can't. I wish I knew the answer to that. I should know. I feel a little embarrassed. I don't know if we do or don't. Pakistan is a strange animal. It's almost like on some days they're our friend, and other days they are our enemy.
Right.
The relationship between Pakistan and the United States is strange, to say the least.
It's funny how some relationships work that way.
Well, yeah, but then you take, for example, your guest the video that you just recently posted, I believe this morning, or maybe it might have been last night, with the FBI whistleblower,
Michael McMahon.
Yeah. Here we go. You know, here we have the Federal Bureau of Investigation not doing its job and playing with national security as if it's some child's game. The Awan brothers should never have been able to work in the capacity that they worked in. We're going to say this over and over again until the people that listen to your show and it finally gets to the necessary people in Congress and the U.S. Senate. We have a national security breach.
Yeah.
Bottom line, we are dealing with national security, and the evidence that has been gathered by you and primarily by Mr. Webb's efforts in a year-long independent investigation points in that direction, that we have a national security breach, and quite frankly, because of the information that was available to Mr. Awan, and because of the information that we believe that he was able to steal, it is a clear and present danger upon this country.
Mr. Hudson, I really can't take any credit for it. I'm merely just corralling the information from the crowdsourced community at large, which includes George Webb, yourself, the interview with Michael McMahon, of course, and that was facilitated by Drop the Mic, who's a Twitter user. And that was my only intention with the Andre Taggart interview, was to just add more information to our collective knowledge, and I felt that approaching Taggart with an open hand and trying to be agreeable was the best approach. That's why I was communicating with him indirectly through the Marine. I'm not a Marine. I have no military experience at all, but it's my understanding quite clearly that there's a sort of fraternal bond between Marines that we were able to utilize in reaching out to him. So I'm going to continue to try to do that to the best of my abilities, and I definitely recognize the urgency of this pending hearing. And I also want to avoid any kind of manipulation of the legal system through in-laws, relatives, or associates of Debbie Wasserman Schultz and other obvious conspirators, because it seems quite clear that that's what they intend to do, get Imran through on a lesser charge and avoid ever talking about the hacking, the burglaries of equipment, the spying within Congress, etc. So I'm hopeful in these last days that we can all get past our personal differences and rally our forces to reach that goal, however we do that.
Well, every little bit helps, and that's the beauty of this, is that when you have people working together and each person finds a little piece of this puzzle and this spider web, that's how this thing is going to reach success. You're reaching out to the former FBI agent, in my opinion, was a very, very smart move, and that's the way this thing will continually progress in a positive direction.
Mm-hmm.
So it is about cooperation. It is about people working together, and that's why we're following through with our commitment, not just to you, but to Mr. Webb and other people that we support. Mm-hmm. The thing that really bothers us, though, is that why is it so difficult for people to understand that we have a clear and present danger? Why is it so difficult for people to understand that we have had a spy ring in Congress? You know, under the Espionage Act, the many of the legalities that people are worried about, and that Washington, where we have an investigation, we need to go through this process. Look, when it comes to national security, these people should be picked up. They should be immediately put into shackles, and they should immediately be interrogated.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something to play with. And why it's so difficult for us to be able to reach out to Washington and shake those cages and get these people's attention is actually very disturbing to us, because it shouldn't be that way.
I agree.
And there's my call coming in from Washington. This is Hudson, out.
Take care.